Well, thank you for joining Just Solutions in one of my regular monthly webinars on different IT and security topics. This month, we're going to be talking about multi-factor authentication. Um, and it actually broaches on a lot of subjects. So we're going to kind of work on your vocabulary and help you understand more about it. And then how you would use it in your business. So let's get into it. You'll hear lots more about multi-factor today, and more than you want to know, probably. So who am I? For some of you joining us today who may not be familiar with me, I've been in the IT industry over 35 years. I know I don't look it, but yeah, no, I started when I was 13. Went to RIT, Roberts Wesleyan, and worked for a big company called Spur Univac. They invented the first mainframe. And from there, went out on my own when after Unisys, we became Unisys when Burroughs and Spur merged. Very much focused on IT security. It's always been my interest. I kind of grew up with the whole internet, working on it very early, and it's just evolved now that everything's evolves around the internet and involves the internet. So I've taken a keen interest in learning more about it. So I'm here to help you demystify this stuff. If you have questions on anything, on any subject, whether it's one of these or not, or if you have a topic you'd like me to do some month on a webinar, shoot me an email. I'm happy to do that. My contact information will be at the end. So I always like to start out with a famous quote. You may or may not know who Andrew Grove is, but former CEO of Intel. And he says he's famous for saying success breeds complacency and complacency breeds failure. Only the paranoid survive. And I think that's a great quote when it comes to cybersecurity. We need to be more paranoid, and we can't be complacent in our security. So it's ever changing, and what you might have done 5 years, even 10 years ago, just isn't enough today. You know, the antivirus on my computer just isn't good enough. There's so much more we have to be doing. You'll be reading about in today's news about the cyber attacks that Russia is doing against Ukraine during this war. Not only are they advancing militarily, physically, they're doing it in the cyber war space as well. So the government has told all of us, shields up. That's their comment for being aware and paying attention to our own cybersecurity. Again, they're using it as both a distraction and subterfuge to get you focused on some other thing. So it's happening as we speak. Your employees really are the last line of defense. I bring this up when we talk about password security. We're going to talk a little bit about that and explain, why multi-factor is so important. But the reality is we are the weakest link. We've done a pretty good job with network security, pretty good job identifying viruses. What we run into is click happy people, people that are gullible, that can be socially engineered into doing something. They can be tricked or convinced that they should be paying a bill or they should be clicking on a link, and they fall for that. So best thing we can do is increase our security protection, and I'll explain to you why MFA is so critical these days. But you got to pay attention to this because you got to work on both your employee training and then using something like using a tool like MFA helps force the higher level of security awareness. Social engineering is absolutely the way that's being done. Very few, 3% I consider a small number of actual malware is getting in through technical flaws. You read a lot about the technical flaws, but the reality is people are really clicking on the wrong thing. They're being convinced that to open up a attachment. The attachment could be a past due invoice. You're going to go to collections, pay this bill. I'd like a job at your company. You're running ads for resumes, so or for a position. So, resume comes in, you don't think twice about it, except it happens to be a Word document with macros built in. So social engineering is not going to go away. It is actually, if you've heard of Kevin Mitnick, who's a famous hacker, his company does security testing, and they have 100% success in breaking into any target company by adding social engineering as one of their methods. If they use all technical methods, looking for, there are companies that actually do a phenomenal job with their network security, but as soon as they come in and they do social engineering, they've been 100% successful. Now, what would be an example of social engineering? I've given you some already. Another would be USB drives being sent to people, or being left in a parking lot or left on a desk, and someone inserts it into their computer and it's got malware on it. Obviously the trickery for emails, the trickery over the phone. There's a lot of things like that. So a lot of the social engineering really is the human element. So our first line defense, our first factor in multi-factor is stronger passwords. So National Institute of Science and Technology recommends that passwords be phrases now. We were always big on substitution, but computers can run the generators to substitute S's with $signs, or I's for ones, and things of that, or exclamation points and things of that sort. So, even the computers can be designed to crack passwords that are using character substitution. So that alone isn't the best. Adding numbers, when you look at the alphabet, 26 letters in the alphabet, you add 10 when you add numbers, you add special characters, you're adding more, and then you do that to the 15th power, you've just created a very complex password. I love password phrases. The space character is actually a special character as well. So actually typing a phrase is making it very complicated password for people. Easy for you to remember, difficult for a computer to hack and for someone to guess. CISA is also highly recommending multi-factor authentication. That's kind of why we're here today. So when you think about multi-factor, factor number one, we'll be talking about this, is your password. And then we'll talk about second factors and additional factors. So stronger passwords. If you're not doing this, go back and go to our website and watch the video on LastPass. It's a password manager that we recommend and we use. That's a way for you to have a different password for every site. You don't repeat passwords, you don't reuse them, you make them complicated. All my default passwords I use from LastPass get generated at 20 characters with upper, lower numbers and special characters. So I'm using 20 digits. They're recommending 15 or more. So when I use LastPass, every time I generate a password, doesn't matter what site it is, they're always different and they're always that complicated. And I don't have to remember them because I'm using multi-factor and LastPass keys to get into my passwords. So that's a great video you can watch. It's one of our training videos we've done previously. Go back and watch and learn about LastPass. It's a very affordable program, something very easy to add for your business as well. So what is identity and access management? I am who I am. Abbreviation I for identity, A, access, M, management. Well, that's what we're doing when we're using a computer. We're identifying yourself, and then we're controlling what you have access to. So that's what a security person at your company, your IT administrator, that's what they're concerned with, is making sure they know who you are, they're identifying you, and then based on your identification, what you're allowed to do. So we're not going to get into the access management side of it. per se, in terms of what the roles you're allowed to do and things of that sort. But one of the standard security things is least privilege. And what that means is, hey, if you don't need access to something, I'm not going to give it to you. Even as an administrator, you don't need access to everything. So we're going to be focusing on the identity piece. And I would like you to know that the identity portion is making sure who is using your account is you. That's the key. Also, even making it so someone who knows you very well and may know your information still can't use your account. So really getting identity down to being protected to you. Once they have multi-factor, once you're doing all that, the next step obviously is the access management side of it. And again, monitoring that as an IT administrator or a business owner is key. And thinking about, well, who really needs access to these files, these folders, these programs? If you're one of those people that are still logging in as an administrator or global admin or things of that sort, those are all things you shouldn't do anymore. You really should have a separate admin account that you use when you're specifically doing admin tasks, but your day-to-day routine tasks should be done in a least lowered privileged account. Okay. So what is SSO? Dave, why aren't you getting an MFA? Because this all ties together. I'm trying to work on your vocabulary here. SSO is something you can keep hearing about, and that's single sign-on. Single sign-on is something Microsoft's been pushing. You deal with it and do a lot of it with you're using Google or Facebook or LinkedIn. A lot of times you'll go to a site and you'll try a site and it says, hey, do you want to log in using your Google credentials? Do you want to log in using your LinkedIn or your Facebook credentials? You may not have figured out what that is, but that's single sign-on. But it's basically those companies are using the identity functionality that LinkedIn has or Facebook has to verify your identity to let you into the system. So some companies that don't want to run their own security profile for you can just validate you and say, okay, make sure I know who you are, but I'm going to validate you against Google and make sure your credentials are correct. That way, in some ways, they don't need to know your cell number. They don't need to know your MFA capability or any of that stuff, because they're relying on the identity verification of Google, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Apple recently has started their own Apple ID, Adobe ID. You'll see them from a lot of different companies. And Microsoft, of course, does it. But the single sign-on is really allowing you to log in once and access many different systems. So it reduces the number of attack surfaces if you're securing those sites and you're not allowing multiple other sites where their credentials are sitting static somewhere, like in HubSpot, or maybe in some other website, a distributor's website, manufacturer's website, somewhere else where you're logging in and putting credentials. So single sign-on really does simplify things, and that in itself is good, but can be bad if you don't have the multi-factor. So that's why I say multi-factor is important. Is you're going to have a stronger password with SSO. Typically, they'll have required. They won't allow you to repeat passwords. It's going to be better enforcement of those. And then they're adding MFA. So you're going to waste less time going from system to system, logging in over and over and over. So single sign-on, you'll see more and more of that. And I kind of wanted to do a little graphic of that. Is without single sign-on, every time you go to whatever different server at your company, you would have to sign on to it. When single sign-on, you can sign in once and the credentials, your identity has been verified, and now the system has security token to allow you to know that, oh, okay, I can let you go into any of these servers. So, and these servers aren't necessarily one company servers. These can be different, literally different vendors, different sites. So single sign-on we use here allows me to get into different systems, and I've signed on once for the day, verified who I am. If I leave and lock out, then I come back in, I got to use my multi-factor again to get back in. And then I don't have to do that logging into 4 different systems again. I've just done it once with the single sign-on. So that's why I want to introduce that term, because it's hard to talk about MFA and adding that new acronym without helping make sure you understand identity management, IAM, and access management, IAM, who I am, and single sign-on. So I'm adding this vocabulary to you, so when we talk about multi-factor, you can tie it all together and it makes sense, because you'll see these used interchangeably in you'll see it in a single sentence, and you'll hear, well, you're using SSO with MFA enabled and that type of thing. So it kind of gets a little crazy. The good news that with single sign-on, you're still using multi-factor. You're not going to use any kind of single sign-on without that re-verification. Also, the system has policies and procedures built into it. There's the ability to make sure that, well, is where you're trying to go make sense? Does your role or your position in the company allow you to go to that other server? So this is not the same thing. Single sign-on is not the same thing as using the same username and password in each system, because it's a security token that is assigned to you. And when you verified your identity with your multi-factor, which we're going to get into, then your single sign-on is just making it easier for you. The flip side is you're going into every site, logging in, putting in your credentials and doing your multi-factor. Then you do it again and again and again and again, every site you go to. And so the idea was, if you're going to go to multi-factor, you can use biometrics, you're going to verify who you are, whatever, then you can go system to system with the single sign-on. So don't confuse single sign-on with a single password or using the same credentials. That's not the case at all. In fact, my password at Facebook is not the same as my password as LinkedIn. So just because I may be using a single sign-on to get between the sites doesn't mean anyone has my credentials to get directly into that site. So it's at an API level, and it's pretty well, until they hack it, it's secure. I know that sounds funny, but that's really how it works until they find a hole or a bug in security, which they do from time to time, and they plug it. We're under the assumption that what we're doing is better than not doing it at all. So that's single sign-on. Not to be confused with sharing or reusing passwords, and not to be confused with automatically getting a pass. Just because you logged on this PC means I automatically get a pass anywhere else. No, your security token identity is being sent to that other server and being verified. And if something doesn't make sense, it's going to make you reestablish your identity again. Geofencing, all those kinds of things playing a part. So getting hacked with multi-factor with the new level of security gets way harder, because of the fact that it knows that it will know exactly more. It will know, well, you'll see when I get into it. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm trying to avoid that. Okay, let's talk about multi-factor. I want to introduce what the factors are. So the first factor we've all been using for years has been a password or a PIN code. When you go up to your car, if your car has a digital lock system, you maybe have a PIN code you type the PIN code, you get in. That's one factor. That's it. It doesn't know anything about you other than you know the PIN code. You give the PIN code to someone else, it has access. You have a credit card in your hand. You take that credit card, you stick it in the ATM, and you give it the PIN code. That's one factor. Okay. It's not multi-factor just because you have the credit card and the PIN code, something you have, something you know, that's really not true multi-factor. Multi-factor is really when we add the third level. So we'll talk about that. So what's two-factor? Two-factor is when you add not only a password, you add an additional item, such as a 6-digit code that gets text to you. You've been doing that a lot. A lot of banks have been doing that. Before we had smartphones, or even, I'd say before smartphones, RSA came out with those little fobs, security tokens. You see people carry those. You get assigned to them by your bank. I had them from Bank of America long before smartphone app came along, and the code on the little screen, on the LED screen, would change every LCD screen changed every 30 seconds, and you type in the new code after you put in your password. That was a multi-factor, second factor for getting into the banking systems. Well, it was a great idea. Those fobs are 30 to 50, $60. You can still get them. You can still give them to plant workers. But what's happened is they've rewritten the apps. So now you can just install an app on your smartphone and get the multi-factor there. How do you secure your phone? Your phone should be secured by thumbprint or maybe facial recognition if you're using that. But the goal is they would need both your password and access to your physical phone for that second factor to get that second 6-digit code. Multi-factor adds three things. So it's not only something you know, such as password, something you have, such as a token, but also something that is you, your retinal scan, your fingerprint, things of that sort. So that adds that additional layer. Let's talk about 2FA. This is the most common thing. You log in with a password, it texts you a code. Is this you? You say yes, and you get in. That's 2FA. People use these terms almost interchangeably. You'll find people talking about 2FA, MFA. They'll use them in the same sentence. I just want you to know MFA is really adding another additional layer. So 2FA is good. MFA is better. Sometimes MFA isn't practical. Here's an example. Cell phones aren't allowed in a DoD facility, in a secure facility. You have to put your cell phone in your locker. So how do you do multi-factor if you're on a plant floor and you can't have your phone with you? Well, that's why you would need a CAT card or a fob or something else that you have besides the PIN code for proving your identity. So this is where it can get a little bit complicated. That's why people, the most secure places use retina scans and fingerprint scans. Now, what's the problem with a fingerprint scanner? What's the problem even with a retinal scanner? Retinal scanner, not so much, but fingerprint, if that data is stored and saved somewhere, it could be hacked and it could be used. So fingerprint data is a concern as well of where it's being stored. So if it's just being verified once and it's not being saved, that's a good thing. We don't want our fingerprints to be actually saved in a system somewhere. That becomes a bigger problem. So, MFA hasn't been beaten. Absolutely. It's really been beaten because of the fact that they've intercepted the cell phone or cloned the cell phone. There are ways and techniques to do that, but that's pretty much at the NSA level. We're not going to be dealing with that. We're not going to be dealing with the common hacker. Even a state sponsored hacker is going to be at that level. That's kind of really James Bond, Mission Impossible crap. All right. So what do we do with MFA? Now we have your username and password. That's your first factor, right? Now we're counting factors. Then we do something we have like our phone, and it sends us approval. And then you have something like it says, okay, now scan your fingerprint so I know it's you. So that's so many times on my phone, that's what happens is on my phone, it will turn around and it will prompt me for putting in my fingerprint. I can't come up with a screen to show you that, but that's what we do is you get that extra additional step. So I can get a text message sent to me that has the PIN code, or I might use my Duo app that will have the prompt for give me my 6-digit code. You can't see this, I know, but I'm sorry about that. But that's pretty much what you're doing is you go from here, them in the middle, something you have, you get your text number, you put the code in, and then you also can validate with a fingerprint. So it could be multiple things. That's the idea behind the multi-factor, having more than one thing. In the military, they use a password, a CAT card, and then a lot of times your fingerprint. They'll use that in data centers for access. You've seen retinal scanners in movies. You've also seen where they rip out the eyeball. I don't think that works so good, but you know, movie Hollywood magic. Okay, so multi-factors. What you know is the first one's your password pins. You know those things. How many people have done those security questions? You know, your best friend in high school, your name of your first grade teacher, what city you got married in, you know, all those kinds of things. Well, a lot of those security questions and a lot of companies use them. Those are another factor. Are they good? That's debatable. You are very active in social media. A lot of those questions may be able to be figured out. Who your best friend is, and maybe they get figured out through your social media, where you went to high school or college. It's very possible that the answers to those question answer sessions that you do with some of these security things can be known. I heard a very interesting idea once, and I used it a couple times, is you don't answer it correctly. You answer with something like, here's one that I do. Oh, I'm giving it away. You all know the answer to this question, but one of the questions was what college, you know, what college did you go to, or whatever. And I went to RIT. Anyone could look that up on my LinkedIn and see I went to RIT. I put Harvard. I didn't go to Harvard, but you could actually, if you want to remember an answer that's not real, that's pretty cool if you think about that. If you're consistently doing that, when you have a security question, the name of your best friend, and it's, you know, made up name, that's good. So when I heard that suggestion, I'm like, that's pretty cool. So you actually use an answer that isn't legit, but that you'll always remember. And I'm like, okay. But so think about those question answers. They do that when you go online to Credit Karma or something like that to prove your identity. They'll ask you, did you ever live on a street? And they'll have different streets and you got to pick one. Did you know, can you look that and research that up? Probably. So those security questions can be challenging. Something you have. How many have ever gotten a bracelet at you know, Disney World for getting in and out of their hotel room? That's a fob. You get key fobs for work now. You might have a fob for your office building or for a garage door. Our mobile devices we use, your smartphone now. Think about it, how that's going to be. You can literally take your smartphone and you know, pay with Google Pay or Apple Pay, using the NFC built right into the phone. So those are all things. And then something you are, which is very hard to steal or duplicate, harder, is something you are. Your fingerprint, your voice print, your retinal scan, your face outline, things of that sort. Those are other ways of doing it. So all of those are adding to the multi-factor. So a lot of times they say it's has to be one of each of these. That's not really true. It could be multiple. Again, it's layers of security. So that's where we get the multi-factor from. So now you know what 2 is. You know what 1 is, password. Second one is password plus a PIN. Third one would be adding one of these others additional questions, fingerprint scan, that kind of thing. So start using that on your phone. Use it with the MFA and get MFA enabled. So now you're not getting into any site without having it linked to your phone. And I have all my sites linked to my phone. All my key programs, systems I get into, I all have in Authy, and I'm getting codes for. It doesn't my stock account, whether it's my VPN, you name it. I have you know, obviously when I go into Microsoft website, even my Ring account are all multi-factor now. You can enable multi-factor on your on your LinkedIn, and I have it on my Facebook. So think about all the people that have been hacked on Facebook. How is a hacker going to guess my password and get in? Even if they got my password, that's what's so great about having multi-factor. If your password is found on the dark web, they still don't have your access to your phone for the multi-factor, your smartphone or whatever your other you're using for your 2FA. So what can be protected? I think using MFA will protect you against phishing. If you get phished and you somehow fall for filling in a form and they get information, if you have MFA turned on at your banking, if you have it MFA turned on all your key sites that you're doing, and you have LastPass protected by MFA. Even if they got your master password, they can't get in without the MFA. So this is the importance of it. So it really is something to enable immediately. So brute force attacks was the big thing. I can run a hash. I can run a program. It's public domain. I can run a program that can go through and crack your Windows password, and it will come back and it will figure it out, and it will come back and tell me exactly what your password is. So without adding multi-factor, which really adds that extra layer. When a password is taken or stolen or phished or farmed, found on the purchased on the black market, whatever, at least you have that multi-factor as an additional layer of protection. So why use it? It's going to protect you from cyber attacks. It's going to really help you deal with a changing workplace, using it for access in and out of facilities, using it access in and out of different systems, and incorporating into your business security model. I am going to talk about legal requirements, and the single sign-on in MFA really actually does simplify things, I think. It may seem annoying, but security is an inconvenience. I've always said that. And I just want you to remember that even though you're using single sign-on to make your life easier, you're not making it easier for a hacker. That's just not happening. Okay, here is one big thing that's I'm seeing everywhere. These are the first people to be requiring it. IRS is working on a, oh, by the way, you're going to hear more and more about passwordless technology. What is passwordless technology? That's basically multi-factor. We're talking about saying that we're not going to rely just on a single factor. So when you see this newfangled, passwordless this and passwordless that, they're really talking about everything I just talked about. They're talking about multi-factor, talking about fingerprint, retinal, CAT cards, fobs, you name it, as multi-factor methods to not just rely on a password. So here's the big one. You're going to get your next audit from your insurance company when you're renewing your business insurance. They're going to have questionnaires, and they're going to ask you about your cybersecurity, your cyber hygiene, what you're doing to train your employees. Almost all of the new compliance requirements, like New York State Shield Act or CMMC for government military, all of those are actually requiring multi-factor for compliance. And if you don't use multi-factor, you'll get declined for your insurance. Now, if you answer yes, you're on the honor system, you answer yes, we're doing multi-factor. Don't think you beat the system, because when you do have a breach and they send in their forensics team, which that is the process. I think I probably should do a webinar on what happens after a breach. And I can tell you what the process is of dealing with your insurance company, the forensics team, and all the notification requirements. That might actually be a good topic, but you're going to get confirmed whether you actually were enforcing it and following your procedure. Insurance companies are looking for the out. They're looking for the way to say, you weren't compliant, you weren't doing what you said you were doing, you weren't doing the things you told us you were doing, your firewall wasn't patched, you weren't doing your annual scans, you weren't doing your security training, and oh, by the way, your MFA was not enabled. on 3 accounts, and they got in on that one account. So they're looking for the weakest link, because if they can do a decline your policy, they will. And there's been some recent high profile cases where insurance companies have declined payouts on some ransomware and some attacks because people did not have their security at the right level of what is expected. No one's expecting us to be perfect, but you better not be saying you're doing something and then not doing it and not doing it. So if you're going to do MFA, make sure it's turned on, and you turn it on for everybody. We are going through the process of, well, the first step was we made sure all our customers that have Microsoft 365, we turned on the global administrator to have multi-factor. Microsoft wants that. Microsoft would prefer you do multi-factor on all the accounts. As soon as an account gets hacked, it's the first thing we tell the customers: you got to go multi-factor. I wish more people did it before, but we had a customer that got hacked. Someone got into one of the accounts. That account unfortunately had permissions to other accounts, and they were able to get into email and start doing all the bad things they normally do when they get into your email. For phishing and things of that sort. And actually, I think they got so far as getting some ACHs going, and they were almost going through the bank till the bank tried to verify some things, and it got shut down. But their accounts were completely hacked. And why? They had a single factor. They literally only had a password protecting it. So if you want to make sure your employees, even if they're using, their dog's cat's name Fluffy as their password, Fluffy123, multi-factor makes it more secure, because Fluffy123 is a crappy password. So instead of just relying on a password, something that can get stolen over, a rogue Wi-Fi, something that can get phished, something that's left in your browser cache. I can't tell you how many other ways that people can get your passwords. We can do it all the time. We actually run a security scan. If you ever want the challenge, just ask me, and I'll come in and run some security scans, and I'll show you, and I'll farm a bunch of passwords right out of your users' caches and browsers. And I bet you I can get your banking online passwords. I bet you can get a bunch of users' passwords. People that take me up on my challenge are always shocked what I'm able to find. So if you want me to do it, I'm happy to do it. And I'll show you why multi-factor is so important, just by the fact that I can harvest your passwords from your existing systems as clean as you think you're keeping it. I bet you I can find stuff. The biggest reason is a lot of people will even answer that question. Do you want me to save this so you can log in for the next 14 days without have to re-enter your credentials? And you say, sure, make it easier on me. Let's not have to re-enter my credentials. Well, you just saved your hash in the system, and now I can just go find that hash, and I can run a dehash against it. So anyhow, it is totally doable if you're not using multi-factor to harvest passwords. So insurance companies are going to require this from you. If you haven't been hit up by this already, you will see it. We just got our renewal. We had to go through a lot more hoops than this, because we're actually, trying to protect our clients. So we actually had to even pay for pen testing and testing of our systems, which I thought was really great. I welcome it. We scored great. But guess what? They found a few little things. We plugged them immediately, but they found about 6 little things that were considered low risk. But hey, I'm happy they found them. Everything else we scored phenomenal on. But if you're not checking it, again, how many people know a dentist that takes care of their own teeth? So, here we are doing cybersecurity. I was very happy to have a third-party company come in and do security audit on us. So something to consider as well. But insurance companies are going to come down on you. And if you don't want your claim to be denied or your policy to be non-renewed, make sure you're stepping up. And MFA is definitely one of those things. And like I said, it's becoming a requirement for a lot of the compliance requirements out there. So take a look at that. Any questions? I've answered actually a few along the way. Let me know if you have any others. We will record this. If you'd like to get a copy of the presentation, just email me. I'll be happy to send out a copy of the presentation to you. We will have it up once it gets saved. We'll get it up on our website and on YouTube channel, so you can come back and other people watch it at a later time. And if you want me to come out and talk to you more about it, as you can tell, I didn't push any products here. I can help direct you on some different products. I really try to make these webinars educational, and I don't want people coming to them thinking they're going to get sold something else. So, I mentioned Duo, I mentioned LastPass. I do mention some products that we're using. I'm happy to share with you what we use and what we do. Um, they're not the only products on the market, and but I'm happy to share with you why we've chose those over others. But I hope you found this to be another useful webinar, and stay safe out there. And let's hope this Ukraine-Russian thing gets settled down a lot quicker and doesn't get worse. So thank you everyone for joining me today, and have a wonderful weekend.